So what I'd like to do now is to invite our first panel to come and join me up on the stage as we work through some of those issues that Winfried has brought up onto the table. So please could you welcome up onto the stage Felicity Barnard, CEO of Ascot Racecourse, Kylie Rogers, CEO of Victoria Racing Club, His Excellency Mohammed Saeed Al-Shehi, who is the ARF Vice Chair and Director General of the Emirates Racing Authority, and Masayuki Goto, who is the ARF Vice Chair and Executive Advisor for Japan Racing Association. Our panel, thank you. Got the order wrong, but got the right people. Kylie, you start there, that's lovely, thank you. Perhaps a small round of applause at least for... And let's not forget Winfried, of course, sorry. Please come and join us, Winfried. And thank you very much, Mohammed. Goto-san, if you come to the next one, thank you. And we'll put Winfried on the end. Apologies, we'll have a quick shuffle. Entirely my fault. I read them all out in the wrong order, and you did as you were told. Right, let's get to business. We've got a lot of ground to cover there, Winfried. You've pointed up many areas to tackle, and I think one that probably features very strongly for all of you is the issue of fan engagement. You drew up there, not just as a challenge, but as a potential solution or an important sort of landmark in terms of developing and growing racing. Kylie, I'm going to start with you. You've had a spring carnival. We saw a thing up there about the Everest, and we've got to share these things. Done really well on a younger generational pool. How have you done it? What have you done? And perhaps also a little bit about how much is it about the young generation or about expanding that fan base?
Well, I think we all know our challenge, and that is core racing fans are diminishing, let's be honest. There's a global trend of the festivalisation of sport, and it's incumbent upon all sports administrators to create experiences that are more than just the sport. And that is the only way we're going to be able to widen our fan base. I think it's really important that we build authentic relationships with the younger cohort. If you get them, you're going to get everyone. I mean, you know the old Nike adage, you get the 14-year-old boy and you've got the rest of the world. So at the VRC and through the Melbourne Cup Carnival, we had a really clear strategy on how do we build an authentic relationship with the younger audiences to then grow from there. As Winfried said, they have a lot of options in front of them. And their number one question is not how much is it going to cost me, it's is it worth my time? They actually don't really care about the cost. So you need to know what it is they want. If you're after more females, what is it that they want? If you're after more fans that are just there for the social connection, what is it that they want? So we embarked about 18 months ago on implementing a youth advisory council with members and non-members. We were really specific on identifying some champions that led that. One of our members is an Australian UFC fighter. And he authentically loves Flemington and everything that racing has to offer. So we used people like that to get a really great bunch of young people in to ask them what the heck they wanted. And they want their own spaces. They want their own marquees and areas. It's just not about general admission these days. They want their own spaces to be free and to create their own connections. They want to get up and close and personal with the horses and the jockeys. They want cool merchandise. And be part of the gamification of our sport. And so we just embarked on delivering that for them. Then you've got to tell the world about it, which you need to have different marketing strategies for the different audiences that you're trying to attract. And for the youth, it's about social media, it's about digital radio, it's about streaming services. So we actually hired a new media and marketing agency that specialises in AI and digital to be able to attract that audience and tell them about it. And yes, we were very clear on the 5 audience segments we wanted, and we had strategies for each of those, and that was the key to our success.
Can I just ask you, you said they want their own spaces as well, their own areas. what does that actually look like? I mean, it's just an area that they can
Well,
go
I
and
mean,
gather in, and if you're over 21, you're not allowed in. I mean, what sort of
yeah,
thing
well,
are you looking at?
they are happy to buy tickets and pay a premium for their own spaces. And so we partnered with one of our corporate partners who already has an authentic relationship with the under 40s, our wagering partner TAB. And we created an enclosure called the TAB Clubhouse. And it was less fancy and more fun. And really it was about these guys just going to the races and having a beer and listening to some music after the races and having fun. They all want to dress up, so that was important. And it's allowing them to buy their own spaces and choosing their own adventure.
Okay, Kylie, thank you very much for that. Mohammed, I think you've got a very different perspective on the way in which the younger generation can be brought into sport, into your sport, into racing. Perhaps you could reflect on that for us. Mohammed? Sorry. I wondered, I think that's a very interesting fan engagement perspective. You're looking at the engagement of a youth and a younger audience, perhaps in a slightly different way in terms of actual interest in investing in racing and buying into the horse?
I'll tell you, since I started attending this conference and since I was involved in horse racing, one of the main topics that we have always discussed is how we can engage the youth to be part of the sport, whether it's from the fan base, whether to be part of owning a horse or part of the experience of racing a horse. And we have seen a lot of efforts which have been done in different countries. We benchmark those efforts. When we look at United Arab Emirates, I think we have experimented a lot of things. So I think there is a session later today where we have the club managers would speak about how they are formatting their days now as festivals to attract the young kids, students, universities as well to be part of the sport. And as Prince Bandar said yesterday in his speech, this is something which is part of our heritage, part of what we do here in this region. So we're continuously trying to engage the younger fan base with us in this sport. One encouraging figure, we have in the last 3 years seen 60% increase in owners in United Arab Emirates. And a good chunk of that are young owners. So young people who are getting into this sport and being part of it. And when you have the young people coming in, visiting the race course, being part of this experience, whether through syndication or through a partnership, that would help bringing other people, younger people as well, to be part of it. And we'll continue to work with the clubs, with other authorities as well, to make sure that this sports go into the younger generation. And I think technology is very key, how we can leverage technology, AI. I've seen some very interesting examples in Hong Kong, how they're using AI to educate people with no experience about horse racing or horses, about the probability of winning, the probability of having the right bloodstock mix in a horse or a racehorse. So all of those are things that we're experimenting and putting together as well. But engaging the young fan base is definitely at the core of what we do.
What you would give, Felicity, for that sort of buy-in from a younger audience in the UK at the moment, I'm sure. But you've got a very strong football background as well. You've been in the role at Ascot for a year or so. And I just wonder, looking at what you have to work with now, where is the solution to getting more young or indeed a wider fan base into the sport now?
Look, we're certainly focused, like so many, on attracting new audiences and young audiences. But I think that the big focus for Ascot at the moment is around attracting a global audience. So absolutely, we would love to have a hotbed of young owners that were coming into the sport. Unfortunately, that's not the case at the moment. But I think the way to kind of fill the funnel of interest, not only around Ascot, but actually as the sport as a whole, is to build equity in everything that we're doing at Ascot and increase the equity in our brand and promote internationally. So, touching on the points that Kylie made, we work very hard to polish and nurture our experiences at Ascot on site, to be able to build equity in that brand and make sure that people see us in our very best light. you talked there just briefly about football. And it's interesting when you look at football because football has this concept that we don't have, none of us in this room, and they have the concept of a fan. A fan, what we would all do for those, they're so loyal and they never leave you. We're in a very different world, and in our sport, we have to try and build interest, following, to be able to cut through, what is a very competitive landscape. And so, I think whether it's the young audiences or just audiences in general, you have to look at your business and make sure that you are creating the right product, both on site and internationally, for people to hook onto. And I often use a line at work where I would say, for example, how do we make somebody that's watching Royal Ascot in Melbourne feel as connected as that person that's actually on site with us? That was always a challenge within football too. In football, they take, clubs would go on tour each year. They would have soccer schools. You could actually take your physical product internationally. We're certainly not going to be opening an Ascot racecourse anytime soon elsewhere. But what we can do is to scalably grow and attract these new audiences through things like content, licensing programs, and actually make sure that we have tactical platforms to be able to attract those audiences. So yes, a younger audience is really important, but I think actually interest at all levels is also.
I think it's interesting that there are so many areas in which you can have stars of the show in racing, whether it's from a trainer to a jockey to obviously to the horse. And I think, Goto-san, if I could come to you on that question of the love of the horse, which I think you're promoting very strongly again within Japan. How is that playing into keeping the numbers up in terms of the fan base, of keeping people coming in? Yeah, if we could talk about a little bit about that, and particularly the love of the horse and the royal family clip that I think we'll be playing in due course.
So it is undeniable that the horse and love of horses are vital elements of horse racing. The JRA has long treated race horses as individual athletes with unique personality. Since the 1970s and 1980s, we have implemented various promotions such as the Hero Poster series, which focused on a single horse with a catchy phrase, the Hall of Fame system for thoroughbreds, and video archives where fans can watch all the races of famous horses. More recently, the notable horse selection videos on JRA official YouTube, which introduced famous horses of the passing years in 3-minute clips, have also become popular. A TV drama called The Royal Family that was broadcast in Japan last year. It ran for 10 episodes from October to mid-December, reaching a viewership rating of over 10%, which is a benchmark for popular programs in Japan. Although I do not think this is the only factor, attendance at racecourse and turnover were both strong during that period. While it is difficult to measure such an effect precisely, it certainly had a positive impact. The story revolves around a family of horse owners and captures the passion for horses. Most importantly, it provided an excellent opportunity to introduce the world of horse owners, trainers, and jockeys to people who are not familiar with horse racing. The drama was originally a novel which won the JRA Equine Culture Award, and the JRA fully cooperated by providing racehorse training centers and horse handling staff at no cost. The program will also be released internationally on Netflix in due course. The effectiveness of various initiatives may vary. I believe that success or failure should not be attributed to a single factor. Instead, A comprehensive approach will lead to guiding a wide range of people towards horse itself or horse racing.
Yeah, and you've got a pretty impressive viewing figures for the royal family there. But Felicity, maybe I could come to you on this. That's easy to say. Our media world is part of the challenge, isn't it? The fragmentation of for channels, for indeed the whether it's online, whether it's going to be linear, whether it's whatever it is. How do you manage all that in terms of your strategy?
Yeah, it is a challenge, and I think everyone in this room will know that we are not a sport that can rely solely on exposure for our value. We don't have the viewing figures that a lot of other sports do around the world. You're right about the fragmentation of traditional media, and you just have to again look to football, where I think in the UK alone you would need to have 8 separate sets of subscriptions right now in order to watch all of the matches that you possibly could. And I think maybe going back kind of 9 years, that would maybe be only 2. So, there's more people in the market, and we're cutting up our market. Interestingly, in the UK, we have a correct obsession at the moment that a linear platform on traditional broadcast is the gateway into our wagering product. And actually, we've long thought that if you are on a linear channel, your turnover will at least stay robust, if not increase. That's a real challenge when you look again, if we talk about the younger audiences that are consuming their media through digital content, online clipped content, YouTube. How do you then balance that when you have the target audience you're going after is actually not watching the channel that you're putting everything on? And that is the real challenge for us as a sport. So at Ascot, we just work incredibly hard trying to find the right platform for the right content to be able to engage as many people as we can. And we often talk about ourselves as a content house. We are a production facility. We have that facility within the marketing team at Ascot, and it's something that we will continue to invest in to make sure that we're actually putting the right content on the right platforms. But it is an issue, and it will only continue to change.
Kylie, it's a challenge for everyone, obviously. I don't know what you do, even within an event. Do you bring different aspects of, I'll call it broadcast because I'm old-fashioned, but of media into the event itself? I mean, young people want to do different things. I think even the Australian Open in tennis, they brought in games consoles and stuff as a sort of almost like a side event to the show. How do you garner the best fan gathering in terms of viewership?
In terms of content?
Yes.
We own our content, we own our broadcasting rights, and we produce it ourselves, which gives us a lot of flexibility to work out what it is that the youth or any other audience segment we're trying to talk to wants from a content perspective. We partner with Channel 9 to do everything but the racing. So we produce the racing side. We invest heavily in virtual graphics. We've invested heavily in new camera angles, like a first world-class Skycam that we've got that goes down the Flemington Strait. And this is what the younger audiences are after. And then we work with Channel 9 to broadcast more of our lifestyle content on their main channel as well as their secondary channels. Then we do an international feed, which is a completely different feed with completely different talent that we sell to 220 countries and territories around the world, just so we can increase that awareness.
So it's completely different.
Completely different.
So what is the difference?
Depending on what those countries want, we create different content.
Okay.
We invest heavily.
Does it still incorporate the sort of the now traditional model of fashion and culture as well as sport?
Yeah, because of that festivalization of sport around the world, everyone wants more than just that sport. They want to see the colour. They want to see the storylines behind it.
And how much do they want to see? How much do they want to see? We heard about, Winfried talked about instant gratification. I know from my own experience, I would sooner now watch Arsenal win 3-0 on Saturday in a 3-minute clip on the Sky Mobile than bother to watch even the 15-minute version on Match of the Day.
Again,
So is that what you're
it totally depends on your audience segment that you're talking to. Some of the more youthful patrons, yes, they just want to watch the 3-minute race or, a 5-minute racing review of some sort. When you might get an older lady who actually wants to watch the entire series of our Fashions on the Field competition. and who won on Oaks Day. And we make sure that we have that content on Vogue.com and also on Instagram in shorter feeds, just so we can cater to those different needs.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much for that. I'm just going to make a point now for all of you, actually. We have time at the end of our session here for some question and answer from you, and it's pretty straightforward to access it. If you go to the app on your phone, which I have, hands up, who's downloaded the app? All right, that's a start. It's not everyone. I want everyone on that app. And if you just go to the session that we're on, so session 1, for example, here, you will see at the bottom an opportunity to put in your question, and then that will be filtered through to me on my phone here, and we can ask some questions at the end. So if you've got questions, please do contribute in that regard. As a little break there, Winfried, I want to jump on something you mentioned there and which you've highlighted as critically important, and that's in the wagering world and these prediction markets that you've been talking about. You said in that presentation that the solution to dealing with that is what we've been talking about here, improved fan engagement. Basically, we've got to just keep growing because other parts of the world are taking in on our business. Is there not more to it than that?
I think there's definitely more to it, but I wanted to probably have a little bit of teaser. Because one of the aspects is even we have to really understand our younger audience and their needs much better. And it has to come with a digital first. Every design, if we want to grow our fan base, even we have the events, we have to think about it digital first. Because the whole lifestyle, the whole how people communicate is different. And this is what we, at the moment, try in multiple trials to understand how we create the digital first and how we tell the story about the sport. There's a storytelling, but there is data. Because with the gamification, I believe we have to go much stronger in gamification and use gamification to tell and entertain, educate people about the sport itself. And we will discuss this in another session, we create now with AI performance criteria of horses so that you can engage and learn, because nobody wants to sit there and say, I tell you now, this is horse racing, this is what horses do, this you should look for. It has to be a self-journey. And using, therefore, AI to describe why a horse like Calandigan, why a horse like Kying Rising are superior. And you can do this with simulation. You can have horses running against each other, but you need the data. And this is what we try to achieve with certain trials we have. We see a very good result, but in the end, we have to get it on a wider base. Because if we do this only in the narrow space of Hong Kong, if you don't tell the story about horse racing and the quality globally, it gets lost. And I believe in digital engagement, we have to rethink how we really present our product and how we engage. One example we see, we have, for example, Happy Wednesday. It's a great success. We attract a much different younger customer base. But how we translate this race going to an ongoing engagement. And all our surveys show if people don't come at least 7 times, if they not 7 times go to events, if they not 7 times engage, the probability of conversion goes down to 5%. So our whole strategy has to shift from event to a more holistic engagement. And I believe that technology, and especially AI, will help us. And if you once have the customer contact, then it goes back how we structure our engagement programs, how we structure our CRM program. So data and building different platforms where we really have a 360 view of the customer will be key to unlock this potential.
So you're looking at a 24/7 operation, effectively, in terms of engagement, rather than focusing on the big events. Perhaps nothing new in that anymore, but it's got to be done. It's got to be seen to be done. Mohammed, what sort of innovations and use of technology are you finding are working for you?
I'll elaborate a bit about the content creation. I met one of the top executives of TikTok last week in Dubai, and I always bring in horse racing when I meet meet them. And I said, how can we engage more audience on TikTok and horse racing? And what he said is very interesting. And he said, Mohammed, in the last Olympic game, we had more people streaming the behind the scene things about the Olympic rather than the sports itself. People were interested to know more about the champions, about the Olympic Village, about what they do behind the scene, more than seeing the competition themselves, which are there on the traditional media. And he said the span now of every clip that you want to, to take the attention of everyone seeing TikTok is around 4 seconds. He said you should create content that in 4 seconds will attract those young audience to know more about the sport. And he said this, he said, why you don't create these creative labs in universities where you have the young kids? You do one in Japan, one in Dubai, one in Saudi, one in Australia, and you ask 70, 80 kids in that university, come create content for me that would attract more kids like you, more university kids like you to come and know more about racing, to know more about horses, to know more about the experience of going to the race courses. And I had another discussion with an executive from Google, and I said, how can we use AI to create content that would attract those young kids to our race courses? Nothing beats AI today. AI can summarize a 1-hour class for a grade 2 student in 1 minute, in 40 seconds, and 30 seconds. If we can go to AI and ask him, how can we attract those young fan base to come and be part of our sport, I think they will give us some interesting answers. And all these labs in different universities would give us some interesting content. And that content can be used to promote the sport, the horses, the races. I think it's an exciting thing that personally I would like to do, and I would start in United Arab Emirates, and we'd see what we'll get out of it. I think if we continue to think the traditional way of producing content, we'll not get to the young fan base. But if we think differently, I think we could get through, and that's something that I would definitely do in UAE and try and experiment and see the result of it.
So the AI phase is still to come for you. You're looking at that now.
Actually, the AI to generate content. The AI to generate content that would attract younger fan base to come and explore the world of horse race.
It's interesting because I think when we've talked before about some of the steps you've made in terms of trying to encourage the younger audience. You've looked at VR, for example, at different ways of drawing them in. There'll be some hit and miss, won't there? I mean, you do not have all the answers.
100%. And I think we should think out of the box. We should think differently. And I think with the evolution of AI, with the evolution of content creation, now people, and I think you would be surprised how many people are watching the news in 40 seconds, in 30 seconds, using TikTok or all the other social media platforms. And this is how we need to think about moving our sports into those platforms. And maybe it's hard for us to think how we do this, but AI can help us to do that. And AI would get this younger audience engaged in these stories of our champions, of the horses, the trainers, the jockeys. At least we'll explore it and we'll see the outcome of that. Yeah. And we'll try something different.
Thank you very much indeed. Look, Goto-san, technology and Japan go hand in hand. Perhaps you could give us some insight into the sorts of technological moves you're making to assist the sport now.
Yes. We do review the introduction of new technologies on a case-by-case basis. But what is more important is how we centrally manage the information and data obtained through technology and how we deliver them to fans. For a long time, the JRA has been providing data such as horse weights and track walk time. We measure the horse's weight approximately 1 hour before the race and announce them. Track walk times are also measured, some automatically, at our training center and share with media. Our fans combine this latest data with past reports available on the JRA website to make their own predictions. Without this centralized collection of data, this process would not be so smooth. While this is not a modern technology, but it has a significant impact on how fans bet and centrally supported the JRA turnover. Our basic management policy is to provide our fans with enjoyment of race predictions, allowing fans to incorporate various data such as bloodline, past performance, and jockey records into their predictions is at the heart of horse racing. When one organization centrally manages the various information and data gained from running horse racing, that information becomes a valuable asset. It also enables one-stop information services that meet fan needs. This is an important point.
Yeah, and it's important how you use the data to make it apply and applicable to different groups. I want to come to what is, I suppose, the fundamental question which Winfried put at the end, which is about global collaboration. And perhaps we can start from a point of, I'm looking at you, Felicity, why isn't it more successful than it seems to be at the moment? And that may be because it's an evolution, it's still developing, but where are the gaps in that sense of a global sport here? And you know, you've got one of the big international offers, if you like. So why isn't it more of already a globally accepted sport and a collaborative one?
Sure. I'd argue that it is a globally accepted sport, well recognized actually. I don't think that we are on the precipice, and actually I agree with Winfried, which was, I think it's more a crossroads where we can go this way or that way. We're not only going to go one way, and you just have to listen to Kylie and all of the information that was put up during Winfried's speech about the growth of the major festivals. So I think we're in a good place there. You know, look, Ascot considers itself to be a commercial sports business. We are and do have plans, big plans for growth and development internationally. And again, to Winfried's point, quite often we feel like we're doing that on our own. We have some wonderful friendships and alliances across the world of racing, and you know they're only getting stronger. But I think that there is, you know, this is a sport that is governed entirely differently and funded entirely differently in every single country, and so we are not in competition with each other to a large extent, but we in the UK have a huge issue where we can't offer the same prize money that lots of other jurisdictions in this room can. We're funded differently. So we are in the fight to try and get the best quality horses and to put the most amount of prize money we can into our prize pot by eating what we kill. You know, so we are going out there every day trying to raise money on our own in order to do that. The other thing that's really interesting, and I sit and often listen when we talk about, you know, our wagering product versus our brand and our revenues, is that Ascot is very proud to have a diversified and pretty balanced revenue streams. So we have, you know, our revenue comes from lots of different platforms rather than just focus on wagering or focus on attendances, for example. And that's really important for us. We're a 300-year-old business, and we need to be here for another 300 years. So we need to make sure that we're protecting that. You know, but back to your point, it is fragmented. We're not governed in the same way. It's a very, very difficult thing to coordinate. But I think if you look at the heart of, I think, everybody within this room at the moment, we need to be thinking about future-proofing this sport for the next 30 to 50 years. That starts with filling a funnel and getting people interested at every level. From that, you can then convert them into owners, trainers, breeders, wagerers, you know, but you need to kind of start there. So look, I'm positive by nature, so I don't think we are in a the world's going to end point of view, but I would say, you know, we need to work together more clearly. Well, can I just also quick the point on the AI, because I think it's useful to give my perspective on that. I absolutely think there is an opportunity to use AI. We do it in some ways in our content. But I would also caution that this is a sport. And it's really important that the integrity of our sport is never, ever lost. And so we need to make sure that we're using tools in AI for our content in the right way for the right purposes, for the right audience, but also that we would never, at Ascot, if we were to do one thing on AI that disrupted the integrity of one of our races, an owner, breeder, it would be catastrophic and we would never do it. So we use AI sometimes, but it's not our main focus or our main strategy. And I would say everyone in sport would want to be focusing on that too.
So in the aspects of AI that you're using it for, are you talking about broadcast here, or are you what
Well,
areas?
Mostly content, so things like social content, perhaps we might do a little bit. But even that, you just need to get the name of a trainer wrong, or the picture of a horse wrong, and your credibility's shot. That, like I said, we've been here for 300 years. We are looked at as an organisation, but also as an industry, with an incredible amount of integrity, as we should be. And so, I'm all for progress, but
Humans get those things wrong, though. They'll get the name wrong from time to time. So you're saying you need oversight. Still,
yeah, you
is
can't
that the
tell
point?
you can't tell a computer off. You can tell a person off.
yeah.
So
Winfried, the one thing that's I think sort of worries me a bit in terms of this field, this talking about the global collaboration, is we're very often talking about the very top end of racing, and I don't know that most punters actually think all the time about the top end of racing. They obviously have their local concerns as well. But the more emphasis that's put on these big events, the harder it's going to become, isn't it, for the rest, the smaller events, the smaller world of racing. And is there not a risk that you create such a divide between the two that you're seen to be looking after your big elite programs, possibly at the expense of everything else?
I don't think it's an expense. If one doesn't widen the fan base, you will have even less chance to attract people to normal events. The question is how you then link, when you don't have the global events, how you link the offerings you have, the experience you have, how you link back what are the necessity to attract fans who get into the sport via the global events. I believe the problem is the food chain, you can say, doesn't start here. You have to create a much wider attraction to be able even to go to that big racing events. And when you look at certain race courses who have very well understood the entertainment part, even on a local aspect, when you go to a race meeting, it's an event. It's not the world-class sports event. But if you link back that you create an interest in the sport, you will have a much better chance, even from a smaller racetrack, to say, oh, that's interesting, I go there. There will be necessary certain investment. And I think when you look at investments, you will need a certain investment in facilities, in events. And this will need a completely different income stream. So therefore, we have to really question, what is our business model? What's our operation? Because currently, our operating model doesn't work any longer in a completely different time. There may be some concentration. And that's one has to realistically see, because if you want to have an experience which match, likely not everybody can do. But there are other aspects, and this is even in different countries. You will have other cultural aspects which enable you to attract people. There is not one size fits all, but I firmly believe if we don't globally position horse racing as a global sport, widen the interest, the global interest, then it will become, even for smaller tracks, much more difficult to create a sustainable business model.
And that's actually, Kylie, that's part of, you said much earlier on about fan engagement. I don't think about what's it going to cost me. I think about, is it worth the time? Well, if we go down a level or two, people are going to go, oh, well, that's great for you to say. You're not worried about the cost, it's about the time. We haven't got the cost. So how do you make sure that all ships rise with this approach to big events, to eyeballs, to fan engagement?
We have a very clear, what we call blockbuster content strategy. We race 21 days a year. And not every 21 days we're going to attract everyone and widen our fan base. In winter, we have our die-hard members and only our die-hard members. But in autumn and spring, that's when we have consistent fan experiences where we can widen and have... So they're not all equal, if you know what I mean, and you've got to be really clear on that strategy.
Mohammed, you have 30 years of building up an extremely successful product in Dubai. How do you maintain that now? What is the next step for you? How do you keep that either up there or try and raise the bar even further?
And I think we continually innovate in terms of technology, the use of technology, the infrastructure, and the regulation. So basically, as my colleague said, the integrity of racing is at the core and the heart of the sport. We take that very seriously. We always try to have the best in terms of rules and regulations. And then we invest on our infrastructure. We have 5 race courses, a diversity of grounds, dirt, turf, left-handed, right-handed, undulated, uphill. So, and we have a world-class even hospital and facilities that we use in United Arab Emirates, and I see this expanding within the GCC as well. And then, as I said, the use of technology. We have our racing clubs which are exploring different ways to digitize things and engage more people into this sport. And you know, as you know, as Winfried said, every authority or country has a different business model for running the sport, but we have successfully created something very international in United Arab Emirates, which started with the International Jockey Championship early 90s, moved into the Dubai World Cup, moved into the International Racing Carnival, moved into now every single meeting in Meydan and Dubai Racing Club is an international meeting, and this moved as well to other tracks like Jebel Ali Race Course, Abu Dhabi Turf Club. All of them have international racing, and I think we'll continue to build on this. We'll continue to make our product more attractive in terms of racing, and we'll continue to engage more people into it. But hopefully at the GCC level, where we'll have even more people participating from different countries and moving horses to participate in every country.
And what sort of, I mean, you've been involved in many major national projects. We're not just talking racing here. As a young leader, then, what have you picked up that can be brought in to assist in terms of racing?
I think it's very, very important. As I said previously, you know, because of my role in media, I always use that to take ideas and thoughts from, you know, leaders in these tech companies which are leading the content distribution today all in the world on how we can promote our sport and promote horse racing way more than it is today. When it comes to the investment as well, wearable technology is something we believed in years ago for humans, and now we're looking into wearable technology for horses, which would give data, analysis, etc. to the trainers, and will only enhance the performance and the welfare of horses. So all of those are well connected. It gives me the ability to connect with way more people in different segments, promote the sport I love. Horse racing is a passion, and to see how I can leverage the other laws that I have to promote racing and to enhance it.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Now, we're getting a lot of questions coming in, so I'm going to challenge you on some of the questions from the audience in just a moment. Before I do that, though, I think it's important to touch on the issue of horse welfare. It is now mainstream, and it's moved pretty fast up the rails to get there as well. Could I perhaps ask, I'll start with you, Kylie, and Australia has had its problems in the not too distant past as well. What are the keys to you to unlocking welfare as a positive message now rather than the negative? Because reputations take time, don't they, to change?
My word. What struck me, and I've only been in the industry for 18 months now, but when I arrived at the VRC, I was shocked at the lack of pride that the people that were working in the business felt about their product. And we unfortunately had a number of deaths during the carnival in some previous years. And we had workers who were not confident to tell their friends at a barbecue that they worked in horse racing. And so for me, it was let's get back to being proud of what we do. And Racing Victoria has invested millions of dollars in welfare and new policies to ensure the safety of our jockeys and our horses. So we need to tell those stories, and we needed to be proud again. For the first time ever during our carnival last November, we dedicated a whole area to Equine Welfare Hub. It was a collaboration with Racing Victoria, and we told those very stories. We're using social media to tell those stories, and guess what? Attendances are increasing, protesting has dropped right back. People are understanding what we're doing to care about the horse. We lacked a purpose at the club when I arrived, and we landed on something that's galvanised our entire business, and that's to share the special connection between human and horse with everybody. And we have all these initiatives to ensure the welfare of the horse, and we are getting better at being confident in telling those stories, and I think that's important.
So you genuinely feel
My word.
you've sort of turned
Yep.
course a little bit. Felicity Goto-san talked about the royal family and about the love of the horse. You know, we know only too well, one incident in one race is a real problem in the UK, as it is in many other jurisdictions. Yes. How pivotal is this issue of welfare now to having Ascot there in 300 years' time, as you said just now?
Yeah, of course, really important. I mean, the horses are our athletes, and we have a duty of care to our athletes to look after them whilst in the game and out of it. I would say, I think that within the UK, the BHA and all of the associated stakeholders do a very good job, actually, of promoting welfare and making sure that the consumer is aware of what we're doing. Perhaps naively, I'm going to say this. I don't see the welfare issue as a barrier for the consumer coming into our sport in the UK. I feel like it is definitely something we need to keep addressing. It's something that we are very focused on. I know all of us across the industry, it's very important. But actually, I think we've done a really good job of making sure that we've promoted, the activity that we're doing within the sport, and we'll continue to do so.
But we'll hear time and again, you must lower those fences. You must remove that whip. I mean, those arguments aren't going away, are they?
No, they're absolutely not. And every time something's brought up, everything is considered with absolute rigour and will be. And the balance will always be struck for, what's in the best interest of the sport, to keep the product right, and the best interest of the horse.
Winfried?
I think, first of all, there's two approaches. The first approach is that we have to use much more science to minimize the number of injuries, especially catastrophic. And I believe firmly that we have made significant progress. We, as International Federation, as ARF, have created that the best scientists from around the world discuss how we can minimize and how we can use what I believe is technology to even detect early signs that there is a potential risk with a horse. That's an obligation we have. The second is the approach of telling the story, how much we care for horses, what we do, and proactively. A lot of times we told the story after something happens. We have to make this as part of our brand, our communication, that we deeply care for horses, that we have love of horses, and that we do everything in a way to look at horse welfare. And this is a much more holistic storytelling than reacting when something happens. And this is, if you see in Melbourne, how this proactive approach has worked. Because other organizations use the space to attack. And we, as a sport, are a lot of times not agile enough, we are too reactive, and we have to go proactive to identify the issues and then come with a holistic approach how we want to respond. And this is, again, it's global. Because one major incident in Melbourne has an impact on us and vice versa.
I think it's really interesting, that notion you put about getting out on the front foot and actually
Being
having
proactive.
pride once again, reinstilling that sense of what a wonderful thing, what a wonderful world we're in. Look, I'm going to turn to some of the questions here because they have been prompted by some of the remarks that we've had in the course of the last 40 minutes or so. Felicity, I'm going to start with you actually, but this is one for a number of you here. Are there any statistics or tracking of transference or conversion of youth audience who go to races with pop concerts or would go to racing without a pop concert? I mean, how much does it have to be the all-encompassing, or is the racing still the most important thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. So We actually categorize our racing throughout the year broadly into three buckets. Those that have a lot of investment from the race course, which would include what you would call the show. Those that have a little bit of investment, so some theming, for example, and then we actually run just our pure racing product. And that's for a number of reasons. One, because we need to make sure that our P&L works across all of our race days. The other is to offer the right product at the right time of year for our consumer. We absolutely see that the bigger race meetings at Ascot are growing, and they are, and they hold. So those that have fireworks, the concerts, certainly are doing well, but they're costly, and they really are costly. So, as I said, we're a commercial sports business. We need to make a profit in order to feed the prize fund. So, statistics I probably can't give you. I think the question is probably how many people come for the event rather than the racing. Is that maybe what it is?
I think it's about how many come for the event plus the concert,
Yeah.
as opposed to those who actually come for the racing, and the concert might be a nice to have.
It's
how much
quite
is it a
difficult.
package?
It's in a package. It's quite difficult to know. But I think the answer is in the sentiment that when we put a concert on, we get more people there. So that's probably your answer.
Is that something you could address, Carly?
Well, I'm actually presenting on this very topic at 3 o'clock this afternoon. So whoever asked that, make sure you're here at 3. But it goes back to the question of, is it worth my time? If I get 4 or 5 hours of racing and then I get to see a great DJ after the last, it's going to be worth my time. And all of our stats are saying absolutely it's a bundle deal. And we've got to do more and more and more of that.
Well, that was a point brought up by Louis Weston, who's on another panel later as well. Thank you for that, Louis. Ram Shroff also says, you may be able to answer this or not, but what is the kind of data you're collecting? Please elaborate. And how are you using that then in target marketing? You suggested maybe you couldn't go there, Felicity, in terms of what the actual data is.
I think, first of all, how we do concerts or entertainment. A lot of times, first of all, you have to be clear what your segment target is. And we have different segments. If you look at Chinese New Year, we have a different segment than international races, or call it now the BMW Derby. Then you design in a way, and you want to target a younger segment, you have to be very clear who the artist is. And we do this before the races. We have a significant spike. It depends on artists. It can be between 20 to 30, 40% of the audience. And how many you keep. So you have to design then programs that they don't only come to the concert, that you create a conversion chance, that you guide them to the experience, what happened at the racetrack. And one of the reasons why we created this completely new venues is to ensure much higher conversion. If you bring them in a normal grandstand and they don't know, they sit there, with racing uncles who have their newspapers or whatever, it's not inducive for them. So you have to create then experience zones. And what we look at when we look at art is somebody who authentic, who talk about the sport positively. So, and then we have engagement, fan engagement with this artist during the race meeting. And this has shown a significant conversion rate. Are we yet there where I would like to be? Not yet, but we see very positive signs, and that you then can create the repeat visits of 6, 7 times, and you have to link therefore these events together to have a real holistic fan engagement and widen off your fan base.
Okay, thank you, Winfried, for that. Let me move on to another question here, which I think is a very pertinent one. With racing seeking younger fans, I think we broaden that to a broader fan base possibly. Do differing rules across countries risk confusing customers and then weakening the opportunity to bring them in? I mean, racing can seem a very complex and sometimes intimidating environment to step into. Those are my words, not the question. Is it time for core international rules to simplify the sport, reinforce safety and welfare standards in the process? Who shall we start with that?
I'm not sure that, I think we're overcomplicating it. If we are talking about the younger audiences, they will tell us one thing, that we are not very welcoming. So we are clubs that they feel they're not invited to. And so I actually don't think they care about the rules. They love diving into stats. They love diving into the intricacies of a sport. That in itself is sport for them. But I think what we have to spend more time on is how do we make our race clubs and our product more welcoming? And that is about consistent experiences, meet after meet after meet. For us, it is about creating reasons for the younger audiences to come to our precinct outside of race day. Why would I come to Flemington? I don't feel welcome there. Well, you know what? We're going to put on 25 music festivals every year. So then we can get your data and find out what kind of music you like and find out what beer you're drinking and find out what food you like. And then we'll mash that with our racing data. And then we've got this lake of information that can allow us to bring more people in.
Okay, so you think that's really asking the wrong question, in a sense. Felicity, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer to the actual question is in two parts. It would only be natural that each geography treats their own consumers differently. Of course they would do, because those consumers want different things, whether that's translated content in its simplest form or, you know, the trends that you see in Japan, for example, wouldn't necessarily be relevant in the UK. So of course people will treat their markets differently. The piece around the coherence around the sport as in general, again, I think that needs to be addressed. And that is that this is the simplest sport, I think, that exists outside a 100-meter running race. This is a sport that if you are entering for the first time, you can put $2 on the horse that wins. You don't need to know anything else other than whether you like the colour of the silks or the name of the jockey. And we have a wonderful opportunity, because of that simplicity, to then, once you have somebody interested and engaged at that top level, to teach them about the complexities that exist to the level that they want to get involved. I think that because everybody here knows our sport in such intricate detail, you can get to the point where you've confused the issue. The consumer that comes, and that's where we need to start, is engaging more people in the sport. The consumer comes onto a racecourse and watches a race, and they're watching the horse that comes first. It's quite simple. And then from there, you can give them all the information. So yeah, I really think we should try and keep that in our minds a bit, really, because when you're in the sport, it's very easy to understand and think that it's very difficult to engage. But I actually don't think that it is, that top level.
So actually, Racing 1.0 is very straightforward. It's when you get further down that you can enjoy the increasing
complexity. And everybody needs to get into that detail.
Yeah.
Do they? People can stay at that level if they want to. It's fine.
Mohammed, can you imagine a racing world where there are common rules across the globe? I mean, we want global collaboration. To many people from outside, that seems like a really quite a straightforward, sensible suggestion.
When you refer to rules, you mean racing rules? I think we're trying. We're trying at the ARF level. We're trying today at the GCC level. Tomorrow there is a session that will be announcing 4 agreements where we are unifying some of the rules. 2 of them are for the welfare of horses. I think we're putting a lot of effort. Organizations like Asian Racing Federation, IFHA, are playing a big role in coming up with these new rules, new regulations, and the adoption of those rules are up to those authorities. But you know, I would agree with the colleagues that some of the countries would have their own unique rules because of you know how different racing are from countries to countries. But for us, for example, in the GCC, we're adapting and trying to harmonize the rules in between the countries to make it easier for people to participate, to have the same rules and regulation across the different countries. So I think maybe eventually it would come, but I think organizations like the IRF, like FHA, are putting a lot of effort into this.
From my point of view, for the already dedicated fans, it's more important. I personally think for the younger fans who don't know the sport, they don't want to even understand and get explanation what the rules are. It's first the engagement and that you make this an interesting experience. Horse racing, in a way, is simple. Who is first past the port Post has one. What happens in between? I don't think that if we go for hardcore customers, we need really the same rules, especially if it comes to promotion, demotion of horse, it's clear. But the younger fan, it is how to demystify horse racing. And I believe even with digital experience, even with AI, you can create, and AI will create stories where questions you ask will be answered individually. Because the great advantage of digital, you can create individual tailor-made experiences, not you create, your customer creates. So we have to look completely differently, and this means what kind of technology we use. Because in the end, we have to create that the customer asks the question. Customer wants to know it. And then from the back end, we have to know what questions the customer has asked. And this helps us to create a more holistic and entertaining experience for a newer customer segment.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's well answered, that question, so thank you very much for that. Breeding was the first issue you brought up this morning, Winfried. We have a question here. I'm going to raise the question, but then I want to turn to Goto-san to get a Japanese reference first. How worried are the hosts of major festivals about the decline in global foal crops, and are more innovative solutions needed to reverse this trend? That's from Will Lamb. Before we address that, Goto-san, we saw again from Winfried's graph, the Japanese story is very much a success story in breeding terms. So let's start with the success story, how you've achieved that.
Yes, last year brought many bright spots for Japanese racing. While this is thanks to the effort of Japanese horse people, I want to emphasize that consistency of vision and policy is vital for a governing body. As I often say, it all comes down to ensuring that bedding turnover is properly returned, creating a smooth cycle of breeding, breaking training, racing, breeding this cycle. Racing systems differ by country and region, so it is difficult to compare everything directly. However, from the perspective of thoroughbred racing, maintaining this cycle in a smooth and balanced way is ideal. This is why we take responsibility gamble and anti-illegal betting measures so seriously. I believe that if such a vision can be realized while gaining the understanding of the breeding, the racing industry, and other related stakeholders, and if it is passed in a manner aligned with the perspective of the wider public, racing fans, the long-term sustainability of thoroughbred racing can be secured.
Well, it's about long-term sustainability. Felicity and Kylie, foal crop numbers are falling in your jurisdictions, and I just wonder how you counter that and how you answer the question.
I mean, yeah, they are. It's difficult. It's a big challenge. The question, I suppose, around the progress of the industry as a whole, and I appreciate we're talking about this internationally rather than domestically, is, is it a sustainable idea to consider that foal crop growing back to the level that it was? Is that realistic? Or actually, do we need to look at our product in racing and see actually if we can match the racing and number of races to the foal crop? And I think that's the question that we, particularly in the British racing industry, need to address at the moment, because that's going to be the balance. I think it's possibly unrealistic to think that we're going to be building ourselves back up to those numbers, just because of the way that the industry is going.
Kylie?
Agree.
Agree. Keeps it nice and short. Winfried, did you want to?
I think one of the issues is affordability. Because if one looks at the cost of owning a horse, has gone significantly up, but the prize money is not. So therefore, this is, especially if you look at some countries where Great Britain has fantastic racing, but if you look at the cost of having a horse in training and the prize money, it's a huge disparity. The other aspect, which I believe when you look at foal crops, and this is something, how many foals we produce are actively run? And this is what we will explore in section 9. do we create now more horses which are not running? And this is from an owner experience. And I believe if you look at value chain, one of the key drivers of our industry is the owner. He invests, he provides all for us as racing jurisdictions to harvest. But if this balance is not right, and if the biggest, especially for first-time owners, the biggest disappointment is the horse doesn't even run. The horse doesn't win. So this is I think, one of the key aspects. If you want to widen our fan base, we have to widen our ownership base. In Australia, I think the trainer syndicates were extremely successful. They have widened the ownership base. It will come to the discussion, digitalization, tokenization of owners, of horses. Is this another way, especially for certain countries, to widen the interest? And this is again, different business model where you can use technology. And you theoretically could even trade then these horse shares, especially if the horse is successful. So this is what we have in industry, has to look at how we can widen not only the fan base, how we can widen the ownership base.
Well, this issue of sustainability in breeding, that is one of the sessions we have. In fact, it's session 9 on Thursday. Indeed, everything we've been talking about, there is a session attached to it in the course of the next 3 days. We're coming close to the end here. I've just got a question which intrigues me. I'd really like to know your response. It's a nice question, which is, which sport do you think best engages a young audience? And obviously you have experience from beyond racing, Kylie, so I'm going to start at this end.
Which sport best engages the younger audience, in my opinion? Well, we just watched the Super Bowl. How cool was that? Again, they offer more than the sport. They're right into new technologies. Every young kid says, yes, that is worth my time. But look, from the AFL, which is an Indigenous game back in Australia, to the soccer, it's incumbent upon every sports administrator to remain relevant and offer something to the younger cohort. And I think every sport is doing their bit and doing a great job of it. And to be frank, we've got to step up a bit.
Yeah, interesting. That Super Bowl, great example. Felicity.
I would probably look to some of the non-traditional sports. And the rise of action sports at the moment, I think, is really interesting. Again, particularly in the UK, we have these huge centres that are being built to accommodate skateboarding, scooting, etc. And the kind of urban trend, I think, is really important because it talks to a lot of what the youth want. It's also very easy to clip and to create the content that sits very happily on the mediums that they consume. So, and it's cool, isn't it? I mean, skateboarding's cool. So, yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Mohammed, do you have a thought on that?
I would say, so which sport, and I have a problem or difficulty hearing because of the speakers, which sport engages the young audience the most?
The young audience, yeah.
I would say football and e-games.
Football and e-games.
E-games.
Yeah, two pretty good examples there. Winfried, thought?
I would say e-gaming is probably the best. And if you look at what certain jurisdiction, how the lobbying has been successful to create a wider framework, our issue is that there is a sport and there's a regulatory framework which 70, 80, 90% of revenues comes from the sport, and it's the wagering side. And this is where we cannot rely any longer on national engagement. If we don't engage more globally, we see our national frameworks tighten our ability to compete. And that's why I firmly believe we need a much more dedicated effort globally to educate our regulators to create a much more holistic label framework, how we look at our sport and especially the gaming aspect.
I suspect the answer probably lies in go and pick the best from everything that's going on everywhere. The one sport that came into my head recently was darts. And darts is hardly the greatest example of fitness, of athleticism, but it has engrossed a new young audience. So there are opportunities out there. We are up on the clock. We've run through the gamut here, and I have to say thank you very much indeed for for sticking through that whole process. Not always easy to hear one another, actually, so thank you for that. I appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, please, a big round of applause for our panel. And we're now going to take a little time out for a coffee break. So we're back in here at 11:45 to resume session 2, which is really building on some of what we've had here about fan engagement, in particular with a look at viewership and broadcasting. So see you then. Thank you.